Please welcome Denise Hewett, founder and CEO of Scripted.
Good morning. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Denise Hewett. I'm the founder of Scripted, and we build technological tools to increase diversity and inclusion in Hollywood. 4 years ago, I left my cushy Hollywood job to start my own company. And that's because I believe entertainment is the quickest way to create change. There's a direct correlation with what we see on the screen, how we perceive ourselves, and what we believe we can be. I've seen firsthand how entertainment moves people, how it deepens empathy. And the data has always supported inclusion. Women-led films do 2 times better in the box office, as do films with casts that are 50% plus inclusive. So when this happened, I wasn't surprised, because the money has always pointed towards inclusion, but the industry hasn't always supported that. And so I wanted to build tools to bridge that shift. Our first tool is a script database. It's the only one that is not pay to play in Hollywood, where we connect the dots more quickly between writers and buyers. And we built this because we knew that a human system could not keep up in a peak TV economy. Not to mention the system was far from equitable in terms of representation. But 4 years ago was pre-Me Too. And as a good entrepreneur does, I was prescient. I knew something was coming that was going to accelerate the need for what we were building. But the industry wasn't really ready to admit inclusion was a problem. From the head of a production company who verbatim told me I was smoking a crack pipe to think that I could affect any change, to the former head of a studio who said, "Denise, I don't know what problem you're trying to solve. If you have a great screenplay, it gets made." Well, I challenge you to ask any director, writer, producer, actor who would support that statement. 88% of showrunners in TV are white men. So great screenplays do not get made by all people. But then Me Too happened, and I thought, here is this divine moment of change. It was the first time Hollywood had to admit that maybe there was a paradigm shift happening. With the sexism of the industry coming to the forefront, a dialogue started. And I'm so grateful for that. But action has been slower to come. I've spent the past 4 years bootstrapping my business, building multiple products to reverse engineer the ways we can mitigate the fear and the risk around investing in inclusion. And I've done it all for less than $500,000. Our first product has grown to 7,000 plus users. We've had 15 properties optioned off the site, 90% of those written by women and people of color. And our first film, Hope Springs Eternal, came out on Netflix last year. And then last year, we went to Silicon Valley to build an entirely new product, a total reinvention of the screenplay, because I want to make screenplays fun for all of you to read. I believe in a world where we can commercialize screenplays to compete with best-selling books and comic books and articles to create a new economy of story, because I'm sure all of you, like me, have franchise fatigue. So with this new product and cultural momentum, I set out to raise our seed round. And having ultimately chosen to bootstrap my business in the past, I knew that this time was different. We had traction, we had users, we had case studies, we had a clear innovation on an outdated format, great beta interaction, and the timing was finally right. And so I met with investors. 300 of them, actually, over 7 months. 50 of whom told me that I was a brilliant entrepreneur. They could not believe how much I had accomplished on such little money, but they were still passing on the opportunity. And this led me to bust some Silicon Valley myths, because we are told that in early stage companies, you bet on the founder, because a great founder will inevitably pivot and pivot and pivot until they succeed. But that wasn't the case with me. We're also told that great founders have grit, they have resilience, they do more with less. I spent 2 years talking to an industry about a problem they didn't want to admit was a problem. I have grit. I have resilience. We have done more with less. But it didn't matter that I was a great entrepreneur with an innovative product, because I clued into something. In 2016, 4.4% of venture capital went to women. That number went down to 2% in 2017, remained steady last year at 2.2%, and so far this year, we're tracking at 1.6%. So despite this perceived cultural movement towards inclusion, the reality is that the trend is going down. And just to really demonstrate the inequity in this space, there are only 34 women of color in the history of venture capital to have raised $1 million. 34. But women of color are starting businesses at a higher rate than any other demographic. So it's not a pipeline problem. So what's going on? Well, 92% of partners at VC firms are men. 74% of VC firms do not even have a single female investor. And when we invest in women, we give them less than half of the funding of their male counterparts. But women are making 78 cents per dollar on the dollar that is funded, while their male peers are making 31 cents. That is amazing! And when we invest in women, we've invested in women in categories we have deemed safe. As I started to investigate further, I noticed a steep trend around the types of female-led companies that were getting funded. And they were in female skewing categories: fashion, beauty, wellness. Because when women start companies in gender-neutral categories, their opportunity for funding goes down by 54%. Of that 1.6%, does venture capital believe that women can only run women-skewing businesses? Apparently. These are the categories that VCs invest in. And as you can see, entertainment is not even on the radar. So on my journey with Scripted, a tech company, and entertainment, we faced closed door after closed door. When my peers with less traction and fewer proof points were raising money, we were consistently told that we were too early. But what I knew then, and certainly what I know now, is that we are onto something. Because I know those numbers I mentioned before, they might feel small to you. But you don't have a marketing or PR budget. Your users are your marketing and PR. And our users are our evangelists. We have inspired something in them. And what I'm most proud of is we have made people feel seen in an industry where they feel invisible. So I began to ask myself, who are the female-owned entertainment companies? And I'm sure you're thinking what I was thinking. Oprah, Reese Witherspoon, all women who did not need to take in outside capital to start their businesses. Because this is who owns the top 5 media companies. We don't really allow women to own entertainment companies. So it doesn't matter how much you hustle and try. The reality is that you might still fail. You probably will still fail. And so for me to understand what was going on, I decided to catalog all my rejections from investors, which is an interesting exercise. And here's what I found. I get the sense that you guys are going after a good market that is ripe for change. If I was closer to the industry, I'd feel more comfortable. I think you're dead right with timing and favorable macro trends. It still feels like there aren't yet enough proof points. I know you've accomplished a lot on very little money, but until there's track record and real growth. While we were both impressed with your vision for redefining the way screenplays get commercialized, we ultimately decided we didn't have the pattern recognition in this vertical to be comfortable placing a bet. I don't fit the pattern. My company does not fit the pattern. And the problem with pattern matching is that it upholds exclusionary practices. Because if historically these industries have only been open to one type of person, then the pattern and the data is always going to support that. And no diversity initiative is going to make a dent. And guys, innovation doesn't come from things we've seen before. Innovation does not fit a pattern. And the University of Chicago did a study on this, and they found that entrepreneurs and venture capitalists knew they should not follow the crowd, but they did it anyways. And long term, those venture capitalists suffered, while non-consensus entrepreneurs who walked into perceived high-risk industries had scrutinized the market more deeply, and therefore they fared better. If we continue to invest in the pattern, we will never reach true innovation. Hollywood is arguably in the most chaotic time it's ever been in, with the streaming platforms battling the studios, with the WGA suing the Big Four agencies. Silicon Valley is arguably in the same place. It's the first time tech giants have had to reckon with what they have built and how it affects culture and society, as well as overinflated valuations that are impeding companies from IPOing. The time is not now to invest in the pattern. The pattern has caused the implosion. The time is now to look at perceived risk as the way to reward. I don't really believe in failure. I think failure is a beautiful growth mechanism. But what's been frustrating for me is that I haven't really had the opportunity to see if what I'm building will fail. I'm still playing small because I haven't had the resources to get in the ring to fail big. But my male peers, not all of them, but many of them, are raising tens of millions of dollars after their first company has failed, to other peers who are making million-dollar mistakes within their own company, which is more money than I've had the opportunity to raise, nonetheless make mistakes with. And this isn't just my story. This story is, unfortunately, so far from unique to me. This is Deshauna Spencer's story. Deshauna is the founder of Quelly TV, and Quelly TV is a streaming platform for creators of color. And Deshauna has bootstrapped her business. She has 25,000 subscribers, monthly recurring revenue. She still struggles for funding. This is Emily Best's story. Emily Best is the founder of Seed and Spark, a film crowdfunding platform. And she wrote a Medium article about the bias she faced while raising. One investment group told her she would need 3 times the traction of Kickstarter for them to even consider an investment. And it's another founder friend story who's going to remain anonymous. But she couldn't raise money for 6 years. And then a famous man became her business partner, and now their company is worth $150 million. And so the problem I face in venture capital is the problem I'm trying to solve for in Hollywood. And if 14 of the 130 unicorns are female-owned, but only 2 to 4% of venture capital has gone to women over the past 10 years, but 10.7% of unicorns are female-owned, I think the potential is huge. And so if you follow the money in venture capital and in Hollywood, it points towards inclusion. So why aren't we following the money? We're at a critical time at the future of our industries, and I certainly cannot do this alone. We are all in this together, and I need your help. We have to look at perceived risk as the way through. Not only will it build us a more inclusive future, but a more profitable one. So at the end of these talks, I know there's usually some sort of grand reveal around someone's raised a lot of money or they've failed and here's what they've learned. I'm still grappling with the reality of my resolution. Like my anonymous founder friend I mentioned before, I am not the exception to the rule. I am the rule. This past spring, I brought on 2 male business partners and we unlocked funding, which I'm grateful for, very grateful for, and they're fantastic allies. But it shouldn't have taken this long, this journey, before a male ally stepped in for us to get to the next stage. It was the first time in my career that I felt like I hit a glass ceiling. So I'm asking you to give women the fair attention they deserve when they start something, when they imagine something, when they invent something. And I'm asking you to allow women to fail big, because as you know from today, we are more likely to win big. Thank you.